Medical evacuations. They are not fun to see and sometimes can knock your favorite player out of the game or hurt an alliance/tribe that you are rooting for. However, their mere existence brings a gravitas into the game that reminds you that what is happening here is very real. People are actually out in the wilderness living there. So today we're going to look at the history of medical evacuations and the reason they happen to each and every single player. Thank you for supporting this channel. Patreon makes this channel possible and makes videos like these happen. This video was made exclusive to the patrons and was chosen by them. If you want to help this channel grow and make more content, then consider joining us on Patreon. You get all of these videos early and even get to pick which survivors I tell the stories of. Thank you for your support. While these medical evacuations can gut you as a viewer, it does bring a seriousness to the show that makes you appreciate it that much more for its commitment to being real. And today we are looking at the times that Survivor Medical forced players to leave the game. There are no other options for them, and those who quit on their own due to how bad they feel is not something we're covering here. So the first time this ever takes place is in Season 2, Episode 6, Survivor: The Australian Outback. The first ever medical evacuation, and like most that will occur, it seemingly comes out of nowhere as we are watching the Kucha tribe just chilling at camp, and everything is being edited and shown to us in a slow, serene fashion. We are watching players do their laundry, scale some fish, and nap, when all of a sudden...
You okay? Passed out, fell in the fire. Stay in the water, stay in the water.
He says he was blowing on the fire and the smoke blew into his face and he inhaled it and passed out. Though that wasn't caught on camera, but it is bad. Mike's Skupin is peeling, and I recommend skipping ahead if this kind of stuff makes you cringe, because this is pretty bad.
Look at these things.
Keep your hands in the water.
Oh my God.
And this results in the first time in Survivor history that the fourth wall is broken, and we see Survivor production and medical. We hear that the Survivor medical team for this season must be local due to their strong Australian accents, and we even see Skupin go to the camera camp, which can't be too far away since they had him walk there.
Okay, have it lay down there, mate. We'll work on getting to
They do end up evacuating him via a helicopter, and this entire sequence takes about 8 minutes of airtime, which is amazing considering how this will evolve over the seasons as well. But this was a massive deal at the time for the show and helped legitimize it in the eyes of those who claimed it was fake, like a lot of reality TV is, to be fair. Tribal Council gets canceled for this episode, and the lead Kucha had going into the merge is nullified with this move, with this medical evacuation. As you may know, Kucha then has no chance in the post-merge game, and it really makes you wonder how things would have turned out had this season still had Mike in it and he never fell into the fire. The next medical evacuation is not until much later, 10 seasons later in fact, in Season 12, Survivor Panama. We begin in episode 11, where it begins, and immediately something is amiss as Bruce tells Shane that he is constipated and sick to his stomach.
You can't sleep. It's difficult just to stand. Oh, my stomach, everything, my whole winter hurts so bad every second. And the pain is just increasing.
While Survivor Medical hasn't been called yet, Kourtney does offer a homemade remedy to help cure Bruce's ailment, whether he wants it or not.
Can I sing a song that helps? No.
No.
However, Survivor Medical is called and they rule that the pain is too much and it could be his appendix. For some reason, they task Shane and Kourtney with helping carry the stretcher instead of medical professionals, and this seems like a risky move.
Point is we're going to take you. He can't stay here.
No, that's
But
fine.
I'm going to need you guys to help me carry the stretcher.
All right, so I might need your hand.
Do we need to do this right this second?
Yes, we do.
It's even more questionable when we find out that Shane is not wearing any pants and is butt naked while the sad dramatic music plays underneath.
All right, guys, I'm naked. If anybody's got a problem with it,
Let's see, it's gonna be all right. Juice is coming. You got it in your vein.
So the real question is, how did Bruce get constipated when he is playing on a show where they barely eat anything? Well, as it turns out, this all stems from episode 6 when he goes on a reward to the local Panamanian fishing village where they eat rice, soup, cheese, chicken, and barbecue chicken. And yes, I'm aware I said chicken twice, but that's how it's explained to us. And they just keep eating and eating and are fed to their heart's content.
They just kept handing you, rice and soup, and then some cheese with chicken, and then barbecue chicken. I just kept eating and eating and eating because I just went crazy. I just ate everything in sight.
Then Bruce goes on reward again in episodes 9 and 10 leading up to his medical evacuation. Episode 9 has him eating rolls, butter, bacon, sausage, orange juice, coffee, while episode 10 has him eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with milk, and that definitely has to be the kicker for the constipation. The next medical evacuation is 4 seasons later in Survivor Micronesia, and it starts in episode 5 when during a reward challenge, Penner injures himself chasing down Suri.
30 seconds left. Penner reaches for the flag. Can't get it. Alexis grabs the flag off Suri. Our injury tally so far. Penner has a busted up knee.
It isn't a great challenge for people's safety as multiple other players are injured as well, but none as bad as what Penner experiences in the long run. It doesn't take long though to see him limping around and bulging at the point where we saw it bleeding earlier.
My knee's a little screwy. I was on the course in the challenge, punctured it somehow. There was some sharp something.
That same night, medical comes to take a look at him and they do some intense work right there on the beach to try and clean up the wound and stitch it up in hopes that it isn't an infection.
Came out to the beach and cleaned my wound and stitched it up. And they left me with 3 stitches and a painful leg.
So we move on to the next episode where we see Survivor Medical return to look at his knee, and he needs them to, considering he is walking around without bending his leg at all. It's gotten worse. They tell him that he needs a lot of things that they cannot do on the island.
This is going to need intravenous antibiotics. It probably needs surgical washout. It's not going to be a quick fix.
And now for the first time ever, Jeff is present for an evacuation where he fills in as the common man, asking some basic questions to help clear things up for those at home. That isn't it for the season, as later on in Micronesia, another injury takes place. And get used to that, this will happen a lot. Episode 12 starts right away with James receiving medical attention for what he claims is a cut from a clam.
I got a finger injury. It was no big deal. It's a little clam cut, whatever. Nothing really to bother with.
He tries to play it down and act like, it's no big deal, but it looks bad. Once again, like Penner's injury, they are worried it could be an infection that goes down to the joint, which would cause lifelong issues.
That infection that's in your finger here is probably going into the joint. If in the morning this doesn't look good, then it needs to go to surgery.
The next day, immediately following the reward challenge, they check out James' finger again, and it has not gotten better. And similar to Penner, they're going to have to pull him from the game. Once again, Jeff Probst does a good job making it simple to understand that this is medical's decision to pull him and not James.
So, Caroline, are you saying it is too big a risk? Are you pulling him from the game? What's the call?
My call is that it is too big a risk. It is.
While his evacuation does make it look like he may have lost a shot at the $1 million, the women were most definitely running the show at this point, and his departure was probably inevitable anyways. However, him being pulled contributes as to why this season has a final 2 instead of the normal final 3. We move on to 2 seasons later in Survivor Tocantins, where the tribes just merged and a big vote is on the horizon. Jalapao has 4 members while Timbira has 6, and Joe on the Jalapao tribe has an infection in his leg that seems very similar to what we just saw with Penner.
What got into it that made it got infected?
A little bug.
A bug?
Like a little, bacteria, parasite.
At the individual immunity challenge, Joe struggles a lot, which makes sense considering what he has to do physically with his legs, and he is the second one out. After the challenge, Jeff has medical take a look at Joe's leg, and they determine that sure enough,
unfortunately, because this infection is so close to the bone, the infection goes to your blood, and that's extremely dangerous. In that regard, that can risk death.
He basically has the same issue that Penner and James had previously, despite being in a different location from them. They end up pulling Joe from the game, which puts the Jalapao group into an even deeper hole than they were before. But if you have seen the season, you know how it all works out.
The doctor said that if it got bad, which it would have if I would have stayed, that I'd, could potentially lose my leg or lose my life.
For our next evacuation, we don't have to travel too far in time as we move to the next season, Survivor Samoa Episode 2, where the tribes have to compete in a fun game of Schmergen Brawl, a game that is pretty physical and has tribes playing a form of rugby/basketball. It requires a lot of physical contact, and unfortunately for Mike Borassi,
Dave and Russell collide in the middle. Borassi and Erik going at it. Big bodies colliding. Erik finally finally get some payback on Borassi.
You know, during the challenge, Mike took some really hard hits. I mean, you know, he was very out of breath. I don't know, he just did not seem right to me.
It seems like due to being older and out of shape, he may have overexerted himself in the challenge, and this is amplified by the confessional we saw from him right before this all happened.
Someone's getting hurt, and it ain't our team. I'm gonna take him downtown to Chinatown, man. I'm waiting for this. Or I'll die trying.
The Survivor medical team takes a look at him and says he is a little woozy. They try getting him to stand up and walk, and...
Little woozy.
Little woozy? Alright, Cameron's there. If you need to sit down. Just shows us that his heart's not coping very well.
So Doc, just so we're clear, you are pulling Borassi from the game?
At this point,
okay.
That's not all, as this season has yet another tough challenge in the works in episode 6. Prior to the reward challenge though, prior to the challenge that is about to happen, Russell Swan has been working super hard in the rain to help serve his tribe.
Russell was out working on the fire while every single one of us trying to stay warm, just trying to keep sane. He's out there just busting his butt.
Now at the challenge, his tribe does have a lead on the other tribe, so they can sit some members out, but he doesn't want to sit out. In fact, they try to get him to sit out though, because it's going to be a super physical task of rolling a massive ball with a tribe mate in it, but he won't back down.
We're going to be able to push if you want to sit out. Unless you want to do it. Yeah, but okay.
You know, I feel weaker as the days go on.
He elects to stay in, and during the challenge while working the table maze, Russell, like Mike before him, has completely overexerted himself.
Russell, go, push.
Russell is exhausted.
Go, Russell, push.
Come push.
Left, Russ, left.
Hold on.
Stop.
Russell.
John up. The ball is right in the middle on the
Don't move. Stop moving.
Russell has completely passed out, and it is clear he has overworked himself much more than anyone else in the history of the show. When medical comes to take a look, this is clearly an emergency, and the fourth wall is broken more so than what we saw before, as we see camera crews and actual production beyond just medical show up.
Russell.
I will say that not since Mike fell in the fire in season 2 has anyone getting hurt on the show ever been so scary. Medical then reveals that they think he is so bad that if he was to stand up again, he will immediately black out. Jeff then pulls an unprecedented move by canceling the challenge and saying no one wins reward. In fact, it feels a bit like everyone's getting punished despite no one having done anything wrong.
I'm gonna make a call right now, which is this challenge is over. Neither tribe wins reward. Both tribes will go to tribal council tonight.
Jeff then gives Russell a pep talk that not only makes him feel better about this decision, helps us feel better, though this one really does suck, as Russell was primed to make it far in the season and could have completely changed how everything played out.
Being taken out of the game for medical reasons is the worst thing I've ever felt in my life. I played every minute to win this game.
So far, it has only been men who have been medically evacuated from the game, but the cruel twist of fate, the cruel twist of injuries, does not care who you are as we move on to season 24, Survivor One World, where in the premiere episode, Survivor is going all out on the big challenge set pieces for their tribal immunity challenges. Jeff explains how each of the castaways need to have their arms crossed on their chest for the initial fall for the beginning of the challenge.
This is a very high fall. Make sure you keep your arms to your chest and land on your back.
Keep in mind though, what he does say is different than the example we actually see in the episode, where Survivor production does not do as Jeff instructed. However, it might be that they did this and found out, oh, you need to cross your arms, otherwise you'll injure yourself, and that's why Jeff's saying it here.
On my go, one at a time, you will jump from a 25-foot tower into a net below.
Anyways, the challenge starts, and I count maybe one person who actually gets close to doing what Jeff instructed. Pretty much everyone else either does half of what he says and lands on their back, or ignores him completely and just lands butt first with their hands hitting the net. However, for Kourtney Moon,
Kourtney gives it a go. Kourtney falls hard on the hands. Keep your hands to your chest.
it isn't too much later in the same challenge when Kourtney has gotten dizzy and it looks like she may even pass out. Jeff calls halt on the challenge and brings in medical to come take a look at her wrist.
Kourtney, are you okay?
I'm really dizzy. I don't think I can do it.
All right, everybody hold up. Stop where you're at.
Jeff then asks medical to give us the scoop on what is happening, and I do want to give Jeff credit as his inclusion in these medical proceedings does keep things nice and easy to understand if things happen too fast to comprehend.
Kourtney came off the net. She landed with her arm down like that on the net, and so she bent it back, and it looks like the bone might be broken here.
They say Kourtney has to get an x-ray done, but it isn't for certain that she is out of the game. However, Jeff says that technically the challenge requires 9 players in each tribe to properly complete, and if the men want, they can take the victory from the women due to a technicality, or they can finish it and compete.
What's the decision?
We're gonna take immunity.
Meaning you're gonna win the challenge right now?
Yeah.
We really thought you were gonna go to opposite.
Yeah. Those guys don't give a crap about any of us girls, and it showed it today. They don't care. This is a no mercy game.
Predictably, this decision upsets the women, as it should, but it ultimately doesn't matter, as later on in the episode,
but her wrist is broken in a few places. It will require surgery, and she is out of the game.
When one person gets injured, it seems like another one is bound to get injured as well. And in episode 6, I want to set the stage real quick with this one. There's a clip from Colton that sums up what he has been like the entire season so far, whether it's in public or in confessionals.
You have 2 options. You have 3. You can enjoy your last 2 days, you can quit, or you can jump in that fire, whichever is more convenient for you.
And keep in mind, this girl that he just said that to is going to be the nicest one to him while he's not feeling great. So unlike past medical evacuations, this is the one I feel the least bad about, as Colton has a massive headache.
And I woke up and I just felt like, literally it felt like my brain had like attached to my skull. Like I thought my brain was swollen.
It only gets worse and worse for him as the next day medical takes a look and thinks it may have something to do with his appendix, since this event is mentioned in a later season as Colton possibly faking it. I did look into what happened, and it turns out Colton had a bacterial infection, though that is not mentioned here since they can't diagnose what is wrong on the island. However, they do of course pull him from the game.
And Colton, that means if we have to take you out and take you to a hospital, you have to be out of the game. We have to pull you from the game.
But don't worry, Colton has one last shot to be a nice person, to get a little redemption for him as a character.
And y'all know an idol's out of play, so tell Sabrina thanks for the souvenir.
You know what? Colton is a spoiled brat. He's going to keep the immunity idol for a souvenir.
Anyways, while the next medical evacuation does not happen in season 25, I do want to touch upon that season here for a moment, as it is interesting that the twist for the season is bringing back 3 players who were medically evacuated to be a part of each tribe.
What these castaways don't know is that 3 former players are returning for a second shot to finish what they started.
They bring back Russell Swan from Samoa, Jonathan Penner from Micronesia, and Mike Skupin, the guy who fell in the fire in the Australian outback. This is a twist that completely pans out and enhances the season that much more, having returnees who are actually bigger characters than they are strategists, and they don't dominate the season, so it's actually fun to watch, and they add a lot of great moments.
The last time I played, survivors smacked me in the chops, and this time I'm smacking back.
However, the next season, Survivor Caramoan does have a medical evacuation in episode 4 when something very small happens. A speck of sand takes a victim, an unlikely circumstance for sure. Shamar has been wanting to quit the game so far, and he gets what seems like some sort of sign that yeah, maybe he should quit, as I cannot fathom how this feels for him.
What's going on?
Scratched my eyeball.
You scratched your eyeball?
It got swollen and I couldn't sleep at night. I'm worried about it.
Jeff and the medical team come out and take a look at him, and his eye is definitely swollen. They determined that there are actually 2 specks in his eye, and they could easily affect his vision. I don't know all the details, but they do decide to pull him from the game.
It's right next to his pupil, or on the colored part of his eye. It could affect his vision. I think from my perspective, I would like to pull you from the game.
No one really misses him though, and the game moves on without much fuss almost immediately after Shamar's departure. As we have learned in the past, if there's one injury in a season, it usually comes with a partner, and strangely enough, this comes out of left field in a shocking fashion in the finale. As right as the finale picks up where the last episode left off, with the tribe walking away from tribal, Erik collapses.
What's going on?
My head is killing me and spinning.
Okay.
The medical team then suspects that Erik may be so starved and malnourished that his body is simply giving out on him, which is terrible considering this is day 36 and he's in the final 5 and is simply 2 tribals away from reaching the final 3.
I don't care. I've come too far. I'm going back to camp.
Would you say, yes, that's okay, or no, you're not going?
Right now, he's gone down, and I don't want him to go any further.
Thankfully for the castaways and for our sake, medical evacuations take a long break and don't return for another 6 seasons when they come back in Survivor Kourtney, but man, they are back with a vengeance now. As in episode 4, at the reward challenge, all the tribes are tasked with digging up bags with balls in them from a decently sized sand area. However, it is really hot out and everyone seems to be struggling to find them.
It could be this difficult to find 3 little bags in a pile of sand.
Thanks for that commentary, Jeff. The Brains tribe miraculously find all 3 bags and win pretty easily. However, something is not right as Debbie isn't feeling too good and has a heat stroke.
Everything okay though?
Whoa. I go on fire from the inside out.
Jeff. I think she's getting heat exhaustion.
How you feeling, Deb?
I'm having a stroke.
All right. Medical.
However, they catch what is going on early enough that they are able to cool her down and make her feel better. The Beauty Tribe then gets second place, but hold on, if there's anything we have learned is that once the injury bug comes biting in a season, it always has a partner.
Caleb, water. Do you need medical?
Yeah, I'd like to just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, he needs medical. He needs medical.
Take a look at Caleb, too.
Caleb is down, and it looks like he might have the same issue as Debbie, but much worse. This is now on the same level as Russell Swan's passing out the challenge. As you know, the emergency is bad when you see a ton of Survivor production actually surrounding him and being shown on screen. But it isn't even just him and Debbie, as get this, Sydney is also suffering from heat exhaustion as well.
Sonny, how you feeling? Sydney, you're gonna be fine, don't you worry.
This is getting so bad that Jeff calls in the cavalry. Everyone on staff is now being told to help with making shade, giving water, the whole 9 yards.
Everybody on the crew is essential personnel.
Caleb, you still with us?
Umbrellas, coolers, water. Find a spot to help.
Ultimately, Debbie gets better, Sydney gets better, but Caleb is so bad that they do have to evacuate him immediately.
You need helicopter to revive. Okay.
All right, we're gonna have an evacuation. Call for the chopper.
You don't want to be pulled. Buddy, you don't have a choice. It's a doctor's call.
The scene is insane and is truly emotional to watch as you see not only the player suffering, but the look of true concern and worry on Jeff's face and the medicals team's face as well. I've never seen the medical team worry this much. It drives emotions even if you don't really care about how each of them are doing in the game. But that isn't even it for Kourtney, as in episode 7, everyone just finished merging and we have some more classic injuries as people are getting scraped, cut, and stuff like that. Jeff and medical come out to the camp to check everyone out as 4 people claim to have scabs and pus at the individual immunity challenge.
And then all of a sudden, Jeff's coming. The doctor's coming to us. Immediately, red flags went up. Jeff doesn't do this. The doctors don't do this.
While everyone seems to have injuries that are clean and will safely recover, and Aubrey actually needs some antibiotics, she gets cleaned and the antibiotics do their trick. But for Neal, this is going to seem like a familiar story to us as we have been watching this video, because he gets an infection and it is right on his knee. And of course, medical is worried about it causing lifelong issues if it reaches his joints.
If the infection goes into the joint, an infection in a joint can destroy it in a matter of hours. Hours? Yes. Very dangerous.
So obviously they pull him from the game, and like Colton, he goes home with the idol in his pocket and doesn't give it to anyone else.
You guys should consider yourselves lucky because they're pulling me from the game.
So Neal's going, and it's on the tip of my tongue. What about the idol with Neal gone? There's no way. The beauties joined the brains and the idol went home with Neal.
Okay, so after all those injuries, we move on to later in the same season actually, as at the final 5 in episode 13 as Joe wins reward, and on that reward he chows down on a bunch of meat, and he normally doesn't eat meat.
The meat is so tender, wow. And I don't eat a lot of meat, you know, because I'm not a big steak guy, but this is
unbelievable. This is all I needed right here. Mr. Joe is loading up on beef and beef and beef, and I knew from my personal experience that Mr. Joe wasn't going to be in a good place later on.
That evening back at camp, that meat is coming back for revenge as Joe is having some serious bladder problems, and keep in mind, he's 71 years old.
I have bladder problems.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, and plus.
It's very reminiscent of Bruce from Panama, as he was also constipated and is also older like Bruce. Medical comes and takes a look at him and says that he could have long-term kidney problems since he is unable to urinate, and Joe seems to be pretty accepting of what they're saying.
And cause long-term kidney damage.
So Dr. Joe, you are pulling Joe from the game?
I think with the potential risk of long-term kidney damage, it's the only safe thing to do.
Thankfully, though, we escape that season with all of its injuries and evacuations and move 5 seasons later to Survivor David versus Goliath. And once again, we as the audience are completely blindsided, as this injury happens completely off camera. It doesn't happen on the island or even at a challenge.
You can't see. It's okay. It's okay. It's good.
Nice, slow, deep breath.
Don't worry, okay. We got you.
Squeeze, mate.
Pat has injured his back on the boat ride back to camp due to the crazy wind and waves that caused the boat to keep crashing into the waves, and they have a very rough ride on the way back to camp.
When we leave a challenge, we are on a boat. The seas are really rough, and the boat slams down on one of the waves.
As Gabby continues to narrate this crazy event, she points out how the arrival of Jeff clues everyone in that this is really bad, which is funny to think how Jeff being at your camp has now become a bad thing.
And then Jeff arrived, and we all groaned because it means that something really bad has happened.
They of course pull him from the game as they suspect he has fractured his back, but they can't diagnose him on the beach and fix him. So Pat is pulled from the game in the premiere episode.
Is there any way for him to continue, or do you need to get him to hospital?
It does make me concerned that we do need to rule out any serious damage, which we can't do on the beach.
So you're pulling him from the game?
I don't think we'll have any choice.
That is every medical evacuation as of the time of this video. Some are because of nature, some are because of bad challenge design, and some are completely the contestants' faults, and of course some are just freak accidents. No matter what, a medical evacuation can shape the course of a season and in a few cases affect who even wins the game. Here are some interesting stats in regards to these medevac situations. Out of the 15 medical evacuations, only 1 was for a female. Age seems to have no effect on likelihood, as the youngest to be medically evacuated was Colton at 20 years old, and the oldest was Joe at 71 years old, with everyone else in between. The average age for these medical evacuations comes out to 38.5 years old. So what do you think? Which medical evacuation gutted you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for tuning in, and I want to give an even bigger thanks to the patrons, as they made this video happen and it was made at their request. Once again, thanks for watching.